All right, so today we're going to dive into some pretty uncharted waters.
Okay.
We're talking about the Trump X-Men, this concept
All right.
of this group of heavy hitters around Donald Trump that Dr. Jordan B. Peterson has sort of identified, as a sort of brain trust.
Yeah.
Now, you sent over a bunch of articles and even like personal notes on this. So let's try and break down what makes this group so interesting.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think is so intriguing about this is that Peterson himself wasn't initially a Trump supporter.
Right.
In fact, he had a lot of reservations, but certain things shifted his perspective.
Okay.
Over time, he saw what he considered to be a strong record of peace during Trump's presidency.
Okay.
And he was impressed by the stability of Trump's family life.
Okay.
And these were clues to a deeper strength of character that Peterson felt was often overlooked.
Interesting.
And that's when he started noticing this sort of cluster of brilliant and, some might say eccentric individuals around Trump.
Okay.
And he saw a potential for real change and impact that went beyond the typical political maneuvering.
So this isn't just another political roundtable or, typical cabinet picks.
Yeah.
This is something different.
It's something different.
I mean, to be honest, though, the X-Men metaphor is a bit out there. I mean, are we talking about superpowers here?
Well, that's where I think Peterson's background as a clinical psychologist really comes into play.
Okay.
He's not just looking at resumes and policy positions. He's actually dissecting personalities.
Right.
Looking for those underlying traits and motivations that truly drive people.
Okay.
And he sees in this group a mix of strengths and, of course, weaknesses that could either create explosive conflict or something truly remarkable.
All right, so let's dive into this roster.
Okay.
Who are these X-Men and what kind of superpowers are we talking about?
We can't talk about the Trump X-Men without starting with Elon Musk. Peterson literally calls him the Tony Stark of the group.
Okay.
Now think about that for a second.
Yeah.
We're talking about the guy behind Tesla,
right.
SpaceX, even the rebranded Twitter now, X, with his vision of the Everything app.
So we're not just talking about business acumen here. We're talking about someone who seems to defy limitations.
Exactly.
Pushing the boundaries of what's possible in technology and engineering.
And remember, Musk has actually floated this idea of a Department of Governmental Efficiency.
Oh, wow.
A whole new branch of government dedicated to streamlining bureaucracy. Now, whether that's a good idea or not is debatable.
Yeah.
But it shows you the scale of his ambition and his willingness to shake things up.
And Peterson actually knows Musk personally, right?
He does.
What's his take on his personality beyond those obvious achievements?
He sees him as incredibly intelligent and driven, of course.
Of course.
But also surprisingly pro-human. He believes that beneath the sometimes abrasive exterior, there's a deep concern for the well-being of humanity.
Interesting.
And that's a crucial insight.
Yeah.
Because it suggests that Musk's motivations go beyond just profit or technological dominance.
So could Musk be the key to breaking through those bureaucratic logjams that plague so many government initiatives?
Right.
It's almost like imagining Iron Man taking on the DMV, isn't it?
A thought-provoking image, isn't it?
It is.
But Musk isn't the only one with a rebellious streak in this group.
Right.
You've also got Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a figure who's never been afraid to challenge the status quo.
Right.
He's a wounded apostate from the Democratic Party, as some have called him.
Kennedy, yeah. I remember reading about his clashes with the party establishment, especially over his views on vaccines and health issues.
Yeah.
He's definitely a polarizing figure.
That's exactly why Peterson finds him so interesting.
Okay.
Kennedy, Musk has that outsider mentality.
Yeah.
That willingness to go against the grain, even if it means alienating powerful people.
Yeah.
And Peterson sees that as a strength.
Okay.
A sign of intellectual independence.
So even though he comes from this famous political dynasty, he's not afraid to chart his own course.
Oh, precisely. And beyond the controversy, Peterson sees a lot of substance in Kennedy, especially when it comes to health issues. He believes Kennedy could potentially tackle problems like obesity and insulin resistance, issues that have been largely neglected by the political establishment. And there's an interesting anecdote Peterson shares about this. Kennedy, despite his fame, actually reached out to Peterson and Dr. Phil, politely requesting a meeting to discuss these issues. He wasn't demanding,
Right.
He was seeking dialogue and collaboration.
Humility and a willingness to learn from others.
Right.
Those aren't qualities you often associate with high-profile political figures.
And that's what makes this group so fascinating.
Right.
They defy easy categorization. They're not just cookie-cutter politicians.
Right.
They're individuals with complex motivations, driven by a mix of ambition, intellect, and a genuine desire to make a difference.
Okay, so we've got the Tony Stark figure, the rebel prince challenging the establishment.
Right.
Who else is on this X-Men roster?
Well, if Musk is the disruptive innovator, and Kennedy is the outspoken challenger, then Tulsi Gabbard brings a different kind of strength to the table.
Okay.
Peterson sees her as the steadfast leader, someone who can provide stability and direction amidst the potential chaos of strong personalities.
Gabbard, right? She's the former congresswoman and military veteran who made a run in the 2020 Democratic primaries.
Right.
I remember her being very composed and articulate, even under pressure.
Exactly. And that composure, that ability to remain calm and focused in the face of adversity, is a key trait that Peterson highlights. He believes that Gabbard's experience, both in the military and in politics, has given her a resilience that's essential for navigating the turbulent waters of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, and remember, she also broke away from the Democratic Party.
That's right.
Which speaks to her independent thinking and her willingness to stand up for her convictions, even if it means going against the tide.
Absolutely.
It's interesting because you wouldn't necessarily think of a former military officer as being a natural fit with a group of tech entrepreneurs and outspoken activists.
Yeah.
But maybe that's exactly the point.
Right.
Maybe that diversity of experience and perspective is what makes his group so potentially powerful.
That's precisely what Peterson argues.
Great.
He sees this group as a microcosm of society itself, with all its inherent tensions and contradictions.
Yeah.
And he believes that their ability to work together, to harness their collective strengths while respecting their differences, is what will ultimately determine their success.
Okay, so we've got the innovator, the challenger, the steady hand. Who else is in this lineup?
Next up, we have Vivek Ramaswamy, who Peterson describes as a young visionary.
Right.
Now, Ramaswamy is a fascinating character. He's got a background in finance.
Okay.
He's a successful entrepreneur.
Right.
And he's been making waves with his sharp critiques of what he calls ESG stakeholder capitalism.
Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely been shaking things up, especially on the political right.
Yeah.
I've read some of his work, and he's very articulate, very passionate about his ideas.
He is.
What's Peterson's take?
Peterson sees him as incredibly intelligent, full of energy, and maybe a bit brash, which, you know,
I can see that.
For someone his age, I think that's expected.
Yeah.
But, you know, he acknowledges that Ramaswamy's youth could be seen as a lack of experience.
Right.
But also points out that it brings a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
An eagerness to challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
That's often lacking in older, more established figures.
So he's the wild card. The up-and-comer, who's not afraid to ruffle some feathers. I can see how that would make him a valuable asset to a team that's looking to disrupt the political landscape.
Exactly. And then we have the final member of this unusual alliance.
Okay.
J.D. Vance,
right,
the author of Hillbilly Elegy.
Of course.
And someone who truly embodies the American dream.
Right.
He rose from humble beginnings to political prominence.
Yeah.
And Peterson recognizes his intelligence, compassion, and unwavering advocacy for the working class.
Vance, yeah. Hillbilly Elegy was such a powerful book.
Yes.
A real eye-opener for a lot of people.
It was.
It really shed light on the struggles of the working class in America.
Right.
The people who often feel forgotten or ignored by the political elite.
And that's exactly what Peterson highlights about Vance.
Okay.
He sees him as the voice of the forgotten.
Right.
Someone who can bridge the gap between the intellectual elite and the everyday Americans who are struggling to make ends meet.
So in a way, Vance grounds this team, reminds them of the real-world impact of their decisions.
Exactly.
He brings that human element that's often missing in those high-level policy debates.
Precisely. So there you have it. Musk, Kennedy, Gabbard, Ramaswamy, and Vance.
Okay.
A truly diverse group.
Yeah.
Each with their own unique strengths and, of course, potential weaknesses.
It's an impressive lineup, no doubt.
It is.
But what does Peterson have to say about the potential downsides of this team?
Okay.
I mean, you've got some strong personalities here.
Right.
Some potential for conflict.
Yeah.
And clashing egos. And even if they can work together, Is it realistic to think they can actually make a difference?
Right.
In the face of such entrenched political interests?
Those are excellent questions.
Yeah.
And Peterson doesn't shy away from them.
Okay.
He acknowledges the inherent risks involved in bringing together such a diverse and potentially volatile group of individuals.
Right.
He sees the potential for clashes, for egos to get in the way of progress.
Sure.
But he also believes that the very things that could make this group unravel could also be their greatest strength.
Okay.
Remember, Peterson has spent his career exploring the tension between order and chaos.
Right.
He believes that true progress often emerges from those moments of friction, those times when different ideas and perspectives collide.
So it's like controlled chaos. You need that spark, that friction to ignite real change.
Exactly. And that's where Peterson's insights to human psychology become so crucial.
Good.
He believes that understanding the underlying motivations and personality dynamics of this group is key to harnessing their potential for good.
So it's about finding that balance, isn't it?
Yes.
Harnessing the strengths while mitigating the risks.
Exactly.
But what about the bigger picture?
Okay.
Can this team actually overcome the political gridlock and resistance that's so prevalent in Washington?
And that's where Peterson's superhero metaphor becomes really interesting. He argues that this group, with its unusual combination of talents and perspectives, has the potential to operate outside the traditional political constraints. They're not bound by the same rules, the same expectations.
Yeah.
They can approach problems in a way that's both creative and disruptive.
I see.
Think about it like this.
Okay.
If you've got a team of X-Men trying to take down Magneto, you can't rely on conventional tactics.
Yep.
You need to think outside the box. Use your powers in unexpected ways.
So they're like a political special ops team.
Right.
Going in to handle the situations that require a different kind of approach.
Exactly.
But can they really make a difference?
Right.
I mean, the political landscape is so polarized right now.
It is.
It's hard to imagine any group bridging that divide.
And that's where Peterson's optimism really shines through.
Okay.
He believes that the very existence of this group, this unlikely alliance of individuals from different backgrounds and ideological perspectives, is a sign of hope.
Okay.
It suggests that there's still room for dialogue, for collaboration, for finding common ground, even in the midst of deep division.
Interesting.
He sees this team as a catalyst for change, a spark that could ignite a broader movement toward a more constructive and less polarized political landscape.
So it's not just about the individuals themselves. It's about the message they send.
Exactly.
The possibility they represent.
And Peterson emphasizes that the success of this experiment, if you want to call it that, ultimately hinges on the active participation of the American people.
Okay.
He believes that citizens need to engage in the political process, hold their leaders accountable, and contribute to the ongoing dialogue that shapes the future of their nation.
So even with a dream team at the helm, the success of this experiment ultimately rests with the people.
It does.
We can't just sit back and expect these X-Men to save the day.
Right.
We have a role to play, too.
I do.
But this is getting pretty heady. Let's bring it back down to earth for a second.
Okay.
What are some of the specific challenges this team would face if they were to actually govern?
All right.
What concrete issues would they need to address?
Well, one of the most obvious challenges would be managing those strong personalities. Ensuring that egos don't derail their mission. Remember, we're talking about a group of highly successful individuals, each accustomed to being in charge. Finding a way to harness that collective ambition while maintaining a cohesive team dynamic would be crucial.
So it's not just about assembling a team of superstars. It's about creating a system, a culture that allows those individual talents to flourish without creating chaos. But what about policy areas? Where do they actually focus their efforts?
That's a great question. And Peterson doesn't provide a detailed policy blueprint.
Right.
But he does offer some clues based on the strengths of the individuals involved. For example, you could see Musk taking the lead on issues related to technology and innovation, streamlining government operations, and pushing for ambitious projects like space exploration and renewable energy.
Makes sense. He's already doing that in the private sector.
Right.
What about Kennedy?
Peterson sees Kennedy as a potential champion for health and environmental issues. He could leverage his knowledge and passion to tackle challenges like obesity, chronic disease, and the impact of environmental toxins on public health.
And Gabbard.
Given her military background and her focus on foreign policy, Gabbard could potentially lead on issues related to national security and international relations. She could also provide a valuable perspective on veterans affairs and the challenges facing those who have served in the armed forces.
And what about Ramaswamy?
Peterson sees Ramaswamy as a potential disruptor in the economic sphere. He could challenge conventional thinking about regulation, taxation, and the role of government in fostering economic growth. He might also focus on issues related to education and workforce development, areas where he believes innovation is crucial for preparing Americans for the jobs of the future.
And finally, Vance.
Peterson sees Vance as a crucial voice for the working class, advocating for policies that address their concerns and provide opportunities for upward mobility. He might focus on issues like trade manufacturing and job training programs, ensuring that the benefits of economic growth are shared by all Americans, not just the wealthy elite.
So it's a diverse portfolio.
It is.
Covering a wide range of issues that are crucial to the future of the country.
Absolutely.
But this is all hypothetical, right?
Yeah.
There's no guarantee this team will ever actually come together. Let alone govern effectively.
That's true, but that's also what makes this so fascinating. It's a thought experiment, a way of exploring different possibilities, different approaches to leadership and governance.
And whether or not this particular team ever comes to fruition, the ideas they represent, the challenges they raise are worth considering.
It's a reminder that there are different ways of approaching politics, different ways of leading, different ways of solving problems. And sometimes the most unconventional solutions can be the most effective.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's so crucial to engage with these ideas, to explore different perspectives, and to challenge our own assumptions about what's possible. Because ultimately, the future of our country depends on our willingness to think critically, to engage in constructive dialogue, and to imagine a better future, even if it seems improbable.
It's about embracing the unknown, the unexpected, the possibility that even in a world that seems increasingly divided and chaotic, there's still room for hope, for innovation, for a team of X-Men to show us a different path forward.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of part 1 of our deep dive.
All right, we'll pick this up next time. Sounds good. So we left off talking about this idea of managing those different personalities.
Like how do you get them to work together?
Exactly, because remember, each of these individuals is used to being in charge. They've achieved incredible success in their respective fields.
Yeah, they're not exactly known for being followers.
So the challenge would be to create an environment where their strengths can be amplified without their egos getting in the way.
So you need a leader who can kind of like herd these cats?
Someone who can command respect, but also foster collaboration.
And who does Peterson see as fitting that role?
Well, he doesn't explicitly name a leader, but he does suggest that Trump himself, with his unconventional style and his ability to connect with people from all walks of life, might be the only one who could pull it off.
Interesting. So Trump as the conductor of this orchestra of strong personalities?
It's a bold idea.
It is.
And certainly not without its risks.
Because if anyone's known for having a strong personality, it's Trump himself.
Exactly. But that's also what makes this so fascinating. It's a high-risk, high-reward scenario.
Okay, so let's assume for a moment that they can overcome that hurdle. That they can actually work together as a team. What are some of the concrete policy areas they might focus on?
Well, Peterson doesn't lay out a specific agenda. But he does offer some tantalizing possibilities based on the expertise of each individual.
Like what?
Well, for example, he sees Musk as a potential driving force behind a technological revolution in government.
Oh, wow.
Imagine streamlining bureaucracy, cutting through red tape, and using technology to deliver services more efficiently and effectively.
It's almost like Musk could be the Steve Jobs of government?
It's a compelling idea.
It is.
And one that has the potential to transform how government interacts with its citizens.
So less DMV, more like Tesla.
Exactly.
And then you have Kennedy.
The health and environment guy. Exactly. Peterson sees him as a potential champion for a more holistic approach to public health.
So what does that actually look like in terms of policy?
Well, it could involve addressing the root causes of chronic disease, like poor diet, lack of exercise, and exposure to environmental toxins.
Interesting. So it's about prevention rather than just treatment.
Precisely. It's about empowering individuals to take control of their own health.
Okay, and what about Gabbard?
Peterson sees her as a potential voice of reason on foreign policy.
Okay.
Someone who can navigate the complexities of international relations with a steady hand and a clear head.
So less interventionism, more diplomacy.
It's possible, but it's important to remember that Gabbard has a strong military background.
Right.
She's not afraid to use force when necessary, but she also understands the importance of strategic restraint.
Okay, so she brings a kind of balance to the table.
Exactly, and then you have Ramaswamy.
The young disruptor.
Exactly. Peterson sees him as a potential catalyst for economic reform.
Okay, what does that look like?
Well, it could involve challenging the status quo on issues like taxation, regulation, and the role of government in the economy.
So he's the free market guy.
He's certainly a proponent of free markets, but he's also concerned about the concentration of power in the hands of a few large corporations.
So he's not just a typical pro-business ideologue.
Not at all. He's a complex thinker.
Right.
With a nuanced perspective on the challenges facing our economy.
Okay. And finally, Vance.
Peterson sees Vance as the champion of the working class. Someone who understands the struggles of everyday Americans and who would fight for policies that promote opportunity and upward mobility.
So what kind of policies are we talking about?
Well, it could involve things like investing in job training programs, supporting small businesses, and strengthening our manufacturing sector.
So policies that create jobs and boost the economy from the bottom up.
Exact.
Okay, so we've got the tech visionary, the health advocate, the foreign policy pragmatist, the economic reformer, and the champion of the working class.
It's a pretty impressive lineup.
It is.
But it's all still hypothetical.
Of course.
There's no guarantee any of this will actually happen.
That's true, but that's also what makes this so exciting.
Okay, how so?
Because it challenges us to think differently about what's possible.
Okay.
It forces us to confront the limitations of our current political system. And to imagine alternative futures.
So it's a thought experiment.
Exactly.
The way of exploring different possibilities.
And even if this particular team never comes to fruition, the ideas they represent are worth considering.
Because they might just spark a revolution in how we think about leadership and governance.
Precisely. It's a lot to unpack, isn't it?
It is. I mean, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
Right. We've talked about the individual X-Men, their potential strengths and weaknesses.
The challenges they would face, the policy areas they might focus on.
And, of course, the big question, can they actually make a difference?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, and I have to say, I'm still wrestling with it.
I think that's healthy. I mean, this isn't about arriving at a definitive answer. It's about engaging with the ideas, challenging our assumptions, and expanding our understanding of what's possible.
So what are some of the key takeaways for you?
Well, I think one of the most important things to remember is that this is all still very much hypothetical. This Trump X-Men team may never actually come together. And even if they do, there's no guarantee they'll be successful.
Right. But even so, I think there's a lot we can learn from this concept.
Absolutely.
It forces us to think outside the box.
Exactly.
To challenge the status quo. To consider new possibilities.
And to remember that leadership can take many forms.
Yeah, it's not always about fitting into a neat little box.
Not at all. Sometimes the most effective leaders are the ones who break the mold.
Right, who challenge our expectations.
And who aren't afraid to take risks.
So what do you think?
You know what I think?
Yeah. Is there any chance this could actually work?
I honestly don't know. But I do know that we need fresh thinking.
Absolutely.
We need bold ideas, and we need leaders who are willing to challenge the system. Whether this particular group of individuals is the answer or not remains to be seen.
It's a fascinating thought experiment, though.
It is.
And I, for one, am going to be watching this space very closely.
Me too.
All right. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the Trump X-Men.
I hope you enjoyed it.
As always, thanks for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
And until next time, keep those minds open.